Well, welcome to 6, Module 1. We've talked a lot on this course so far about IRAs, be it in dispositions, be it in early takeout of funds, also in areas of what we are able to do as far as, I'm getting distracted by our screen, but what we are able to do as far as the savings by individuals, but now we're going to get into details on it. And we'll start off with independent retirement accounts. Very popular today. Probably should be more popular, except there aren't a lot of people pushing them. In fact, when I did my survey a few years ago, I found that the most common type of setting up an IRA was caused by, one, seeing a financial planner, and two, by tax preparers. Because what tax preparers would do is, when they're preparing the tax return for a client, they would suggest the client set up a IRA to save some tax money. Make a long story short, a lot of tax preparers make more money on the setting up of the IRAs than they do on preparing the taxes. So those seem the only two really interesting, because let's face it, for a brokerage house, a $5,000 or $6,000 account isn't worth anything for them. In fact, they'd probably throw you out of your office if you came out of their office if you went in there for setting up an IRA, because these are small dollar. They have much better than they were. I think when I first had my first IRA, it was $500, and I was so glad when it went up to $2,000. And of course, inflation has probably wiped out a lot of that. But it has been around a while. It's just not advertised very much, and very few people really understand it. In fact, again, probably the only time they really get a good description of it is when they go get the taxes filled out by the person who gets a commission on setting it up. IRAs allow one to make a tax-deferred investment to provide for financial security when they retire. It was originally designed for people who did not have retirement plans at work or were self-employed. And then it was also designed for women who were divorced and were only getting alimony was their whole source of income, and they wanted to save for retirement, so IRAs were expanded to allow to cover not only payroll but also alimony. It's not a qualified plan, as they're sponsored by the individual, not an employer. It's got a separate set of laws, although some of the things are similar, as we found out in the last couple of modules. Exception is the Roth IRA, which can be under an employer-sponsored plan, and some employer or union-sponsored plans as an alternate to a pension plan. If the employer provides funds, it can be taxable to the employee, and you need to really see your tax advisor on that. That is well beyond the scope of what we as financial planners do. When one needs an IRA, and this gets back to a lot of information I got from the IRS, its purpose is to shelter income from taxation and saving it for retirement. We want to defer taxes on investment income, and it's another reason. And that's probably where the financial planner gets involved. Is client comes in and says, well, I'm investing, and geez, I'm tired of paying taxes on these investments. And the answer might be, well, put some or all of it into an IRA. You need to save for retirement. Obviously, that's what IRA is good for. You need a supplement to a retirement plan is needed, and a lot of retirement plans and pension plans don't provide a lot of the money for someone. Therefore, you need to supplement it, and that's where the IRA comes in. And when covered by a pension plan and don't expect to stay with the employer until retirement age, you definitely need an IRA. And that's probably where I push the IRAs most in my office, is someone's on a pension plan, and I know that the probability of them staying till 62 is probably very low. Not only that they may leave or the company may lay them off, but also the plan may go under with the economic conditions we have today. So that IRA is a nice supplement to that, and as a risk avoidance. There's two basic types of IRAs. The traditional, you can contribute in this until age 70 and a half. Sometimes it's tax deferred, sometimes it isn't tax deferred on the amount you put in. In other words, if I put $5,000 in this year, in some cases I deduct $5,000 from my income, and for income tax purposes. In other cases, I pay tax on the $5,000 I put in. In either case, it's great because the value of the increases is on a tax-deferred basis. As I mentioned here, tax deductible in many cases, and you are required to start distributions at 7.5. So you can contribute to 7.5, then at 7.5 you have to take distributions. Again, exceptions of Roth, you don't have to take distributions out. Withdrawals are taxable except for the basis in the IRA, and the basis of the IRA is what you would put in. So, and again, we're talking about the Roth, we're talking about the traditional, and in the traditional ones, many times people earn a lot of money and have a nice pension at work or retirement plan at work, and they still want to have that IRA for added protection or added income, and that many cases will be taxable because there's a threshold caps as to when you can have a pre-tax IRA. Let's take a look at the Roth. Contribution has no age limit. You can do it till you're 99 if you're still working. I might note for both of these, it has to be from wages or alimony. It cannot be from the basis for being able to come up with the money cannot be investments you have or passive income. It's not tax deductible, so what you put in, but again, the gains on it are not going to be taxed, and you're not going to be taxed when you take it out, as provided you met the requirements. There's no required distributions for Roth. In fact, a lot of people today are using Roth as a system of passing money to their beneficiaries by setting up a Roth, and then when they die, the money goes and there's no tax on the retirement plan that comes out of a Roth to the beneficiaries. Now, if the beneficiaries in turn transfer it to their beneficiaries, yes, that's the second turnaround will start to occur taxation. But as long as the first set of beneficiaries from the decedent get it, there will be no tax on them. Withdrawals are tax-free if meet time requirements. Again, there are restrictions. Fortunately, they keep it relatively simple. How does one get started? You can set up an IRA with, and the most common ways, because no one advertises it, is you can go to a bank or financial institution and they will set it up for you in their investment area. I think almost every bank today has an investment area, and you go there. Your life insurance company is also a good source. If you have a life agent or your client is seeing you for life insurance, you can set it up for them. Mutual fund companies, Vanguard, Fidelity, and all the rest will be glad to set it up for you. The stockbroker, registered investment advisor, and I'd say a financial planner would do it. Now, when I talked about the person preparing the tax returns doing it, they have to have a registered investment advisor license or work for as a registered rep. So they can't do it without that. Again, for people who do taxes, it's pretty easy for them to pass both the registered investment advisor test and the Series 7, so it's a matter of either locking up with a stock brokerage firm or being independent and working as an investment advisor. But unfortunately, it is not well advertised. You don't see ads on paper about setting up your IRAs, and I wish more effort would be made because there's so many people who could benefit from it. Funds for IRA contributions that cannot exceed the wages and salaries earned this year, or professional fees if you're a, say, consultant like myself. If you sales commission, tips and bonuses, and alimonies, those are the sources. In other words, you cannot use passive income for an IRA. Note that the earnings that are listed above can be used for a spouse who earns less than the IRA cap. And so if we have a stay-at-home spouse, for example, I have a client who the wife works, her husband was disabled veteran, and really is limited to what he could do as far as work. He basically, I guess, is the housekeeper and does the cooking. And she, since he doesn't earn anything, she is able to finance his IRA because she has well more than the amount of money needed to fund the annual IRAs. I think she earns like $140,000 a year, so it's not a problem. What can one invest in with the IRA funds? And this is from the IRS because I've seen some of the textbooks go beyond what the IRS says, and I'm always leery of anything that goes beyond what the IRS says, because the IRS is the ones who make the rules, let's face it. And yeah, it might look attractive in a textbook or in a treatise, but what will the IRS accept? So that's why on a lot of these charts in this course I use the IRS, because this is what I know is acceptable without going into the gray areas. The law allows for IRAs to invest in anything, but you're not permitted IRA funds to be invested in life insurance or collectibles. And let's face it, life insurance is tax deferred, IRAs are tax deferred. I'm not sure you gain anything other than paying an additional commission. Nor in collectibles. There is, if you invest your IRA in collectibles, the amount invested is considered distributed in the year invested, and you may have to pay a 10% additional tax on the early distribution. Some examples of collectibles are artwork, rugs, antiques. IRA trustees are permitted to impose additional restrictions on investments. For example, because of administrative burdens, many IRA trustees do not permit IRAs owning to invest IRA funds into real estate, although legally you can. In fact, people have bought apartment houses with IRA funds, and that's not someone says, how did you get that much in IRA? It's the IRA rollovers. Someone's in a defined contribution plan, has $800,000 in that plan, rolls it over to an IRA and says, I want to buy an apartment house. But that can be administratively exhausting for the poor trustee. The IRA law does not prohibit investing in real estate, but trustees are not required to offer real estate as investment. And there's some other things too that your trustees may not handle. And again, going back to what we talked about when we talked about pensions, it's got to be a insurance company or a trustee that are running these programs. Maximum annual contributions, the maximum you can contribute to all of your traditional and Roth IRAs is smaller of the indexed amount. That's higher indexed amount if you're age 50 or older. And again, I say that because every year it's different, and even in a year, at the end of the year, Congress could retroactively change it for the year. Your taxable compensation for the year. So if your taxable compensation is lower than the indexed amount, and God forbid that happen, that would be a limit. The IRA contribution limit does not apply to rollover contributions or qualified reservist repayments. Roth limitations, the same general contribution limits applies to both Roth and the traditional IRAs. However, your Roth IRA contribution may be limited based on your filing status and income, which are indexed. As a consequence, there are a lot of people who have some they put in the Roth and some in the traditional each year, and there's nothing wrong with it, but the total cannot exceed the total authorized. IRA contribution age limit, you cannot make regular contributions to a traditional IRA beginning in the year you return 70.5. However, you can still contribute to an IRA Roth at any age. And I have clients who are working and saving still, as opposed to spending their savings at 70.5. And what I tell them to do is, well, don't put any money in your regular IRA, now put it in your Roth, and you can use the Roth money later on after you met the time requirements. And if you die, before you take the money out, it will go tax-free to your beneficiaries. Many rollover contributions to Roth are traditional Roth regardless of your age, and so that's again transferring from another retirement plan such as a 401k or profit sharing. Can one contribute to an IRA retirement plan at work? You can contribute to a traditional or Roth IRA whether or not you participate in another retirement plan through your employer or your business. However, you might not be able to deduct all of the traditional IRA contributions as a tax deduction for the year. If either spouse participates in another retirement plan at work, there's a cap, it's indexed, and there are charts in your textbook as well as in any textbook or treatise on this subject that shows you what the cap is for a particular year. And again, it changes each year and sometimes gets changed during the year retroactively by the Congress. Roth IRA's contributions may be limited if your income exceeds an index value. Roth is less benefit than it is a regular IRA if you are a high income person because of the limit on the Roth. Excess of IRAs. An excess of IRA contribution occurs if contribution is more than the contributed contribution limit. It makes a regular IRA contribution to a traditional IRA after age 70.5 or older, makes an improper rollover contribution to an IRA. An improper might be when someone quits a company and they get the check, they ask for the check for their defined benefits plan, they take that, defined contribution plan, they take that check and put it in the bank, and 3 or 4 months later stick it in an IRA. Well, that would be an example of an improper contribution. I might note this chart comes from information from the IRS, again, because sometimes I see material in books that can be a little misleading in this area, so we want to keep it to what the IRS says. Excessive contributions are taxed at 6% per year as long as the excess amount remains in the IRA. The tax cannot be more than 6% of the combined value of all your IRAs as of the end of the tax year. Now, that tax is pretty high today compared with other government taxes, and I really think that that should be indexed, but again, as interest rates are going up, this is getting more in line, so maybe it doesn't need to be indexed. To avoid the excess contribution tax, withdraw your excess contributions from IRA by the due date of your individual income tax return, including extensions, and withdraw any income earned on the excess contributions. Well, let's give you a simple example. And I'm going to take numbers right out of the air. It has nothing to do with reality. But let's say that you take IRAs up until you earn $100,000 a year. If you $100 of income of salaries and wages and earnings from your business add up to $100,000 or more, you cannot take a tax-deferred IRA. And your plan right now is you're getting $70,000, and all of a sudden at the end of the year, like November or early December, your boss says, "Lee, you've done such a great job this year. We're giving you a $40,000 bonus," which does happen, not to everybody, but does happen to some. And the bonus is awarded December 1st, which throws you over the $100,000, which means you've taken out more IRA monies than you should have because you've gone over the excess allowed by the plans. Therefore, that would be a good example of where you have too much money in your IRA compared with what you're allowed, and you have to take it out. And if you don't take it out, you're going to be assessed, and the tax, and also if you're also going to pay income tax on any of the earnings of the excess contribution. So it's a no-win proposition. Therefore, I tend to encourage people to make their IRA contributions at the end of the year or prior to April 15th, because you can make an IRA contribution up to April. Traditional IRA exception for early withdrawals without penalty, and then we talked about this earlier in the course. A home buyer one-time exception. It happens once, and the rule is someone who has not owned the principal residence the last 2 years. So let's say you own a home, it went underwater, you walked on it, that was 2 years ago, you've been renting for 2 years, and you buy a house again, you can use your traditional IRA to help finance it. Medical premiums, you must be unemployed, you must meet certain requirements. Again, I'm not sure what the effect of Obama will be on it, but the Obamacare, I'm sure, will sometime cover it when I'm done writing all our procedures, which may be a long time from now. Traditional IRA exception for early withdrawals and without penalty. Distribution due to a participant's disability. Again, this is a government disability, not the type of disability you have at your employer, which is a lot easier to get. Government disability, remembers you have to be disabled for at least a year or probably being caused death from the disability. Distributions are part of a series of substantially equal periodic payments made over the life of the participant. And you can also have a designated beneficiary under today's law. Distributions for medical care. Again, we don't know what Obamacare will do to this one. Distributions to unemployed individual for health insurance, and we don't know what's going to happen to that one. But that's certainly right now a big issue because we have so many people unemployed in this country. Traditional IRA exception for early withdrawals without penalty continued. There's some more. In retirement plans and pension plans, you don't get to take the money out very easily other than on loans. But in IRAs, you got a lot. And another one is distribution for higher education costs for taxpayer, spouse, child, or grandchild. Distributions made on or after attainment of age 59 and a half. Distributions to an IRA's participant's beneficiary or estate on or after participant's death. You might wonder why there's so many exceptions, because the IRA evolved from a savings plan. And the savings plan, which was the government set up, wanted to make it attractive for people to save. This is in the 1960s. And it evolved into an IRA. Well, if it's for savings, why were you saving? You were saving for a house, education, etc. And that has floated over into the IRA, and that's why we have it. That is it for this.